What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, a podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, divorce coach Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Joining me today is Dominika Staniewicz. Dominika, let's just jump right into this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be your guest and to maybe provide some value to everybody who's listening. Who am I? I am elite neuron coding specialist at the Neuron Coding Institute. And I also train other people in what I do at the Neuron Coding Institute. And also, I'm a brain health coach and I train people how to rewire their brains so the brain doesn't get in your way of creating a life. So you get rid of that self-talk. So you don't react and overreact. So those feelings don't take over. So depression doesn't set in. So ADHD becomes your best friend instead of your enemy. So fears don't prevent you from living. And the approach is very different because it's not only psychology, it's first of all neuropsychology, and second of all, is hacking your brain with biology.
Mhm.
And that is very different because we do look at your blood work.
Hmm.
We look at different brain structures, how they work.
Hmm.
And we specifically target those things that are under or overperforming. And I am excited to share everything we know because guess what? We have found that in about 80% of cases, medications might not be needed.
Mm. Yeah, that's actually, I mean, there's always a bit of a stigma with medication. I think it's probably specifically for men. I don't know, like I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to that. But I know for me, and in the communities that I'm a part of, and there's always a bit of a stigma. So if we can do it without, that's amazing. So you mentioned depression, and that's kind of what we're going to dive into today. I'm excited to talk about this stuff because I think it's fascinating. Because I think the it sounds kind of cheesy, but the more you know, the more you're able to deal with something. And so if you know that it's, there are certain things that are why they're happening and what to do about them. Those things are all exciting to me. So, but I like to define things. What is your definition of depression?
So the definition that we go by, it's the state that you're in where for over 2 weeks, you don't feel engaged, you don't feel like doing anything, nothing gives you pleasure, you don't smile, you don't want to join in into other activities, you're not creating future plans. And the over 2 weeks is quite important.
Okay.
Because we as humans have to experience the whole range of feelings, and there are so many of them, and that's part of human experience.
Hmm.
So it's not good to always be perky and joyful and going, yes, life is wonderful 24/7.
Right.
And then it's not okay if you're, always sad and depressed and looking at the dark side of life. But I just want to make sure that we understand that some types of depression are self-induced.
Hmm. Oh, okay. We're gonna dive into that. Let me write that one down because we might come back to that. So there's a couple things I sort of wanted to ask around this topic. I guess maybe it's a two-parter here, and you can pick and choose. But one is what's going on inside the brain, as far as we could tell. Is there anything that we can say? Look, can we look at a depressed brain and know that it's depressed, or what is it? How is it different? That's
We
number
can.
one. And then number two is, I guess, sort of what is happening then? If something is, then what is it? So let's dive into that topic. What do you see in a depressed brain versus a non-depressed brain?
So first of all, there's something called a SPEC scan. And SPEC scan measures blood flow and oxygenation and activity in the brain in real time. And that's a great question because about 4 months ago, a huge study was published by UCLA and Amen Clinics, Dr. Daniel Amen, who also trained me. And they took 40,000 depressed brains. And I wanted to see, okay, all of them had the same diagnosis, right? Depression.
Mm.
So first thing before I jump into what we learned is depression is the symptom, not the illness.
Hmm. Okay.
So it's a very different approach. And what we saw in those 40,000 brains that you could divide this different type of functioning in 7 different areas of the brain, but the symptoms outside were the same for everybody.
Okay.
So What that means, that's why sometimes some medications don't work on other people. Because most of the time till now, nobody looked at your depressed brain and said, oh, this is overactive. Oh, this is underactive.
Mm.
Oh, there is no activity here, but there is overactivity here. The discovery was also interesting because everybody thought that if there is a depression, that would mean the areas, different areas like basal ganglia, anterior cingulate, and all the other parts of your brain would be underactive. It turns out it's not true. Sometimes depression comes from overactivity in a certain area of your brain. So when we self-describe, and that's how psychology works, and there is a lot of pushback to scanning brains, but the truth is, unless you see an organ that is creating that feeling, you really can only go, well, I feel down, right? But
Right.
you cannot pinpoint which area of your brain. I can
Right.
see through your skull going, oh, that part of the brain. So
Right. Right.
scanning your brain sometimes might be a great solution for people who are seeing that medication or the techniques that we do don't work. So depression, first of all, is a symptom, not an illness. It's a symptom of your brain not working properly. It's not doing the right thing, and it's not wired. Or maybe there is a chemical imbalance, although that's just one of million things that could be, right?
Mm.
You might have brain trauma that creates that. You might have also self-induced depression, which is combined with your belief system. And that's another thing. You might be a dopamine junkie that ends
Hmm.
up in a depressive state because every time you get that hit, you kill other receptors in your brain, which are called serotonin. And serotonin is the chill happy chemical.
Right.
So dopamine gives you excitement when you drive. So you associate that with pleasure, the excitement of getting somewhere. That's the pursuit. At the same time, we need to also just be happy looking at the stars, going, oh, life is cool, right?
Right.
And all of those experiences are necessary. But if you are a dopamine junkie and you're addicted through social media and other ways, the A-type personalities are addicted to dopamine. Also, people pleasers. A lot of men are taught to be people pleasers. So they
Mm.
literally create that depression, depressive states, not knowing it's not a choice. It just, that's how it is, right?
Right.
So understanding all of that and having a brain scan, not everybody does them, but you can go to Amen clinics and do that.
Yep.
And some of the clinics do it as well. You can see which part of your brain is malfunctioning. But let's say you don't have the money to do the scan and you don't have the money for the assessment. There are plenty of things that have been proven to be more effective than Prozac and antidepressants. Now, granted, there are some cases that you cannot skip the idea of medication. You just can't.
Right. Sure.
But at the same time, when your brain is wired a certain way, taking medication will not be enough. That will numb you, that will allow you to function.
Right.
But I highly recommend getting a therapist or a coach or a psychologist.
Sure.
Why? Because you need to learn a different perspective when in better state of looking at things.
Right.
And at the same time, we can also look at non-medication, which are therapeutic value grade supplements that are provided, let's say, by Dr. Amen and few other places that have very, very high quality supplements that work like medication, but are less invasive. So there's so many things you can do with depression, and depression is real.
Right.
Don't let yourself say, oh,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
pretending. It's
Yeah.
100% real. I know I had it
Sure.
and it sucked.
Yeah.
It was PTSD related when my son just died. He just died, period. He was 16 months.
Oh,
And
wow.
that threw me into a depression for 2 years.
No.
And getting out of it, it took very long time because
Right.
seeing your child getting stiff in your hands and not
Right.
breathing, it's a traumatic event, period.
Yeah, it
Right?
sounds, yeah.
So depression is very real, and acknowledging it's the first step. But when you acknowledge, you have to, as number one self-care, get out of bed. The longer you stay in bed, the longer you will stay depressed. No matter how much you don't care, like moving out of the bed, no matter how much you don't care, like going for a walk or going out with friends, getting out, it is actually saving your life in many cases.
Yeah.
Now, some depressions will go away, and those are depressive states, and they'll just go away on their own, but that's rare.
Yeah.
Um, and we do go through all stages in life, and life throws things at us, right? Getting divorced. I've done it
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
Definitely no fun, right?
No, not at all.
No, it's no fun for anybody.
Right. So I want
And
to go back a little bit to what is going on inside in the maybe the majority of depressed brains. Like what is happening? Is there overactive amygdala? Is there, and I don't know much about the brain, so that's like the only part I could call. I mean frontal lobe, but um, what's happening in general inside of a depressed brain?
so, as they said, there are 7 types of depression, and literally every part of your brain can be overactive or underactive. That's very important. So, for example, anterior cingulate gyrus, that is your gear shifter in your brain, ACG. So, changing opinions, changing your mind, if that doesn't have enough blood flow and it is very rigid in movement, you get very stuck. When you
Hmm.
get very stuck, then you don't see the future of your life because
Uh,
you don't see a way out.
that's fascinating. Okay, so let's stick with that. So how do you change that?
Well, that's a great question. There are plenty of ways to change that. None of them are a snap of a
Oh,
finger.
I am sure of that. Yeah, yeah. None of this shit is a snap of a finger.
No. And that's also important to remember that one of the things to do is, first of all, change in diet.
Hmm.
We got to look at what you're eating because the nutrients you're providing are allowing your brain to create something called a neurotransmitter, and that's created in your gut.
Mm.
So if you're eating crappy food, it's kind of like wanting to build a house without any bricks or supplies.
Right,
It's not going to happen.
right.
So we need those bricks and supplies, which are your neurotransmitters and the proper food. And I'm not going, be 100% clean, eat organic. No, I'm just saying proper food, no junk food, and
Right.
stay away from sugar and alcohol. I know, challenging.
Yeah, yeah, it is sure is. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I could send you later on after the podcast. You can use brain scans of how a brain looks like when you're drinking, just one drink a day. I guarantee you, most of you will
Oh,
stop drinking.
yeah. I mean, I've never seen that, but I have done enough reading books and watching videos and stuff to know that alcohol is a poison. But boy, is it fun to drink. So, I try to limit it, but yeah, but I'd love to see that. Okay, so diet that makes some sense to me, of course, right? So what else can you do to change that
Right.
that part of the brain
So
that allows you to make some changes, I guess?
bilateral movement.
Gotcha.
So anything that's cross-eyed. And the best one so far that we're recommending is pickleball, table tennis, dancing, and juggling.
Interesting. Huh.
That requires quick decision making. That requires working with adrenaline. That requires eye movement to both sides. That requires you stimulating also your body and making decisions and also making from both sides movement. So it
Hmm.
engages your full brain.
Gotcha.
Another thing you can do if you get rigid is to start questioning your brain. And that's something we don't do. Notice that we question authorities all the time. We go,
Sure.
oh, he's wrong. Oh, I wouldn't do this. But when a stupid thought comes to your head or you decide on something, you have literally, you go, oh, okay, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, it isn't. It is whatever you choose to be. It's like there's this quote that everybody uses, but it has so much power. Life has no meaning unless you give it.
Mm.
See, and your divorce has literally no meaning to me. I mean,
Right.
I can say I'm so sorry that it happened to you, but I
Sure.
probably even don't feel sorry. I'm just being courteous,
Being nice, right? No,
right?
makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
But because it had such a big meaning to you, it's your whole world
Yeah.
is changing.
Yeah.
So it's the meaning you gave it.
Yeah. True.
Now, there are some countries that, for example, celebrate divorce, and there are divorce parties where you're celebrating parting ways and starting a new chapter.
Mm.
Now, although it sounds abstract, is it possible to be excited about something new and better coming your way when you get divorced?
So is that about focusing on, I guess, the positive in some kind of way?
No, positive on possibilities. I'm not going to
Okay.
say positive because
Okay.
being positive has to be also healthy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's a story that we tell, and that's actually my friend's coach. She has the story and she told it. I'm like, can I steal it? Because it represents exactly what I want to say. When she went to a funeral, there were two sisters, their brother died. A horrible event overall
Sure.
and a sad event overall. But
Absolutely.
one was sitting there and, crying her eyes out. My life will never be the same. My life is over. My rock is gone. And blah, 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 blah. The whole 9 yards. And she was feeling it truly, and it was a tragic event to her to the extent that she couldn't see the future.
Mm.
The other one was sitting there and crying, but had peace about her. So when she started talking to them, the perspective was very different. The perspective was for the other one, he's not in pain anymore. And I'm so glad I had all those events with him that taught me so much. So I can use that in the future, right? So picking the, and it wasn't denying being sad. It wasn't denying going, oh, it's great. It wasn't the euphoric feeling. It was like, it is sad. And
Yeah.
I can see something coming out of it.
Yeah. It's about taking a different perspective, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Mm.
And that is something that keeps you stuck. That is something that is the rules that you've created in your head, how something should be. And anytime you have that rule or that expectation in your brain, it creates the rigid behavior.
Mm.
What it does, it doesn't allow you see different options. And options are a way out of depressions and giving you hope. They're way out of feeling down, feeling not enough. There is another example that Tony Robbins gives on stage, and I crew his events and I've done a lot of trainings through him. And it's a story about two gentlemen that went to war and got blown up in a tank.
Mm.
And one became just an alcoholic and walling in the pain and the fear that he lived through, absolutely realistic, PTSD to the moon and back, horrible experience. The other
Mm.
one had the same horrible experience, and he chose to start working as an activist against war with no alcohol because he didn't want other people to experience what he did.
I mean, I can relate to that.
Yeah. So as you can see, it's the meaning they assigned to the event. The event is horrible. There's no denying
Yeah.
that. It's tragic. It creates changes in the brain. And interesting enough, we very much abuse the word trauma.
Mm.
Actual trauma changes your brain biologically.
Yeah. I believe
That's
that.
so, if somebody goes, I'm traumatized because my mom didn't get me coffee. No, you're not traumatized. You just had a bad experience.
Right.
So let's give the trauma the proper treatment. But the truth is that the trauma is an event with a feeling on the other side that has been connected.
Yeah.
And if you have PTSD or you have mental trauma, I do it and many other people also have the license to do it. Please get EMDR treatment.
Mm.
EMDR is non-invasive, non-medication, disassociating the feeling and the event. You'll remember the event without the feelings after it. The PTSD in 80% of cases, sometimes even higher, is gone. There's
I
really no reason why you should suffer. And this is what saved my life after my son dying.
mm. Interesting. I feel a rabbit hole coming. So, okay, EMDR. Um,
EMDR.
my understanding of it is it allows you to bring the event into the present in order to make it processable. Is that a word? I think it is.
It's a word for now.
Okay, so that you can file it away and sort of put it somewhere where the brain can go, okay, that's a thing, and now we don't have to keep thinking about it and ruminating over it and figuring out where do we put it, and we can sort of move on from it. Is that, can you get into the technical?
Okay.
That's my layman's clearly understanding of it. Can you
You're
can you
doing
dive into that?
you're doing great because as long as you get what happens as an outcome, we're good. You don't need to really understand the technicalities.
Oh no, I do.
Okay, you do. Okay. The outcome is going to be the same if you understand it or not.
Right, right,
Like I very often don't understand how the engine works, but I still drive it because it works.
right. I got you.
So with that being said, what happens is you have two parts of your brain, right
Yep.
hemisphere and left hemisphere. One hemisphere stores memories and feelings, another stores language, right?
Yep.
And when you create a memory, they're stored in different places of your brain.
Uh,
And when you bring up a memory, automatically you bring out the feeling, which is recreating that feeling and releases chemicals into your body.
mm,
That's how we feel.
no.
Feelings are chemical releases, and they're very important. So we're not dismissing them, we're just naming them.
Gotcha.
And what EMDR does, it allows for those two things to get disconnected.
Interesting.
So when you bring up the memory, the feelings don't come up. It cuts the cord in between. That's how you stop reliving it.
Mm,
Because reliving it is not the memory. I can remember a picture from 2 years ago that had no meaning to me, and I'll go, oh, it was a nice picture, and
mm,
nothing happens. But if I remember my son dying before the EMDR and few other people that I've worked with, that had trauma, I would immediately start shaking. I would freeze. I would have tears coming down. The whole 9 yards would be happening. I was reliving the feeling and the experience.
mm,
EMDR allows you to have a memory. I still remember my son. I still remember him dying, but notice that there is no emotional reaction when I talk about it, and I'm okay with it. It's an event in the past without the association of the feelings. That's what EMDR does because
interesting.
it's not helpful to forget. Forgetting is not a good thing because everything in life serves a purpose.
Mm,
Because of my son dying, I've learned how to love here and now and not give a crap what somebody's going to think if I say I love you too early, too late. Me and my daughters, I have two grown daughters now. We literally are a weirdo group in the whole environment because we say I love you after every time we hang up the phone. It's like bye. And we say, hey, good morning, I love you. And it's every good morning, right?
yeah.
It's so infused into us to making sure that we never miss the opportunity to make sure that person we love knows we love them. And
Mm,
that's in my household. And everybody in their environment, which is 25, they go, you always say I love you?
mm,
Like all this time?
mm,
Yep, we do, right?
yeah.
But that wouldn't be possible without my son dying because
Mm.
I realized for me, that event created an urge, a need to truly love without hesitation, no matter what.
So
And
that calls back to the perspective change,
yep,
right? So let's go back to that. Let's go back to the list. So we're working on our diets. We're moving essentially bilateral movements, I
yes,
think was your
yes.
phrase. And we've worked on sort of changing our perspective. What other things can we do in order to alleviate? I don't know if that's the right word, depression.
Well, another thing we can do is spend time with people. And I would love to give you a study that there is, and it's very practical. So if you're married or divorced, it doesn't matter.
Mm,
Find somebody you trust. One of the things that creates human bonding is oxytocin.
hmm
And oxytocin is highly released for women when we're having babies. That's why we go absolutely insane. And it's not that we don't love you, man. We love you. It's just our brain is flooded with oxytocin, and you're not the one keep coming out of our tummy.
hmm
So, kind of at that point, that oxytocin goes only towards one way, right? And what happens is when oxytocin to be released as an adult without the significant event of giving childbirth is to hug somebody with your full body for 31 seconds. Going, hey, you, and patting on the back is not going to work. It doesn't
Right.
give you the connection. And when I work with adults that are in couples or are married, when they try it at home, they go, oh my God, 31 seconds, that's so long. I mean, there are
Right.
studies that say 27, but I prefer to take the longest just in case the 27 was
Sure.
wrong.
Yeah, I like it. I
So
like it.
and it's non-sexual, non-related to anything besides a long, calm hug. And you count to 31 seconds. You cannot imagine how much different your body functions, your brain functions after being flooded with the connective, loving chemical. That's one of the ways of getting rid of it.
Mm,
Another thing which they have found, and it's prescribed in many countries, but US, but in Norway, Denmark, other countries also do it. It is walking in green areas. with an exercise that includes specific breathing
Okay.
and then includes noticing anything nature related. It was kind of interesting because my daughters about a few years back brought me a TikTok video, and they were like, "Mom, look." I'm like, what? So the 20-year-old at that time, young lady, was teaching her peers how to do natural walking. And I was like, what's natural walking? Well, it turns out that the young generation had to relearn how to walk without music and stimulation. So she was teaching them first, you take off your earphones for 5 minutes and you just walk around and notice birds. Then you could put your earphones back on, to listen to music to calm down. Then you do it for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then nature walking means that you're just not using your phone or any type of music and you're just enjoying the present. And it was kind of interesting because this used to be natural for my generation. My daughters were raised like that. Obviously, the other young lady wasn't. The truth is that in Norway, Denmark, and quite a few other countries, this is literally prescribed for depression.
Hmm.
Our connection to nature, we're not meant to be in caves, in houses, in buildings, in front of screens.
Mm.
It's just our biological functioning depends on that light exposure. And we're going now into circadian rhythms.
Mm.
One of the best ways to improve your mood is every morning when you get out, there's a ritual. 5 minutes if there's sun, be in the sun when you get up, first thing in the morning. If there's some clouds, it's about 10 minutes. And if it's an overcast, 20 minutes.
Hmm.
And do it every morning. It wakes up your natural cortisol. Cortisol, by the way, is good if it's not too much of it. So
Huh.
everything is good in moderation in this case, right? You go outside and you just be. That's all you do. Just be.
Hmm.
Another thing for that is highly recommended is dancing.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen anybody who is dancing and is depressed?
No,
No.
no, no, definitely not.
No, because you're starting to move your body. And although you force yourself at the beginning, at one point the chemicals start to, your brain has to respond to the movement, to the music, and to
Sure.
the association that you've created before. So
Mm.
what we're doing, we're using neuroscience, things that you're already associating with positive experiences, and we're forcing them upon you so your brain can release the chemicals that are associated with that. Now,
Mm.
these are just very basic things we can do. There are plenty of exercises you can do at home, mirror conversations, high five conversations. I mean, there's a bunch of things that we will teach you. But
Mm.
we're going back again to questioning your brain. And I'm going to give you 4 questions or 3 questions by Dr. Amen that I teach all my clients. And it's, is it true?
Mm.
Is it really true?
Mm.
Who I would be without this thought?
Mm.
Because your brain is the biggest liar of them all. Lies to you constantly, tells you stories that are not true. And because your brain is designed to distort, delete, and generalize, because it's using so much energy, it
Yeah.
doesn't have time to analyze everything. It
Right.
just comes, oh, this looks like this. Okay, let me collapse this with this. And then you create this story.
Yeah.
I also want to invite anybody who's suffering from mood swings to get your blood work done and
Mm.
get your hormones checked.
Well,
Now, they
okay.
don't
I want to stop you there because what am I looking for? Because I think I'm a little guilty of mood swings. I'm not as bad as I've been in the past. But what am I if I get blood work? What am I looking for specifically? Like when I get the
specifically.
test? Yeah.
So, first of all, your testosterone levels.
Okay.
And if you're under 40, please do not go on tea because if you start taking it, you're never getting off of it.
No.
There are holistic doctors. I don't do that, but then I refer to the right people where you change your diet and lifestyle and it allows your testosterone to go up.
Interesting.
And first try that. And if that doesn't work after half a year and you've been diligent doing exactly what you were told, then go and seek them because medication is important, right? We used to die at age of 20 or 30 and
Right.
we're done. So there was no medicine there. So let's not demonize medicine is good,
Sure.
but we can try other things instead of just straight going for the pill unless, you're dying or something tragic is happening. If you have cancer,
Right.
please don't drink juices. Just get the chemotherapy,
Right. Well, I'm
right?
with you there.
Right. So there's like place for everything.
Sure.
But I'm giving you all the alternatives before you go on medication. Sometimes there's no other way.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for? You're looking for testosterone for men, women also estrogen and progesterone. For men also and women, we're looking at magnesium, potassium, ferritin, and iron.
Okay.
Now, and D3. D3 is actually a hormone, not a vitamin. I don't know why we keep calling it a vitamin. D3, it's not a vitamin, it's a hormone. But
Hmm.
with that being said, it's not that you have it. So let me give you an example. If your D3 is low, you're not producing neurotransmitters, your moods can be lower, right? But if you have the norm is between 30 and 100 in America on the tests, if you're at 40, it's doing literally nothing for your brain.
Hmm.
You're in the norm. We don't want you to be in the norm. We want you to be at optimum. And that's a very different thing.
Okay.
Because in the norm, you're at 40, but it's not doing anything for your brain. So the optimum is between 50th and 70th percentile
Okay.
for all of those.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I got to go get some blood work done.
Yes. And I have my blood work done every 6 months.
Okay.
I'm at the lovely age of perimenopause where my hormones are trying to dictate what my brain does. Let's just say I'm using all my resources not to go absolutely crazy.
I bet. I bet.
But guess what? Men go through perimenopause too, and it's called andropause, and most people don't talk about it.
I did
You
not know that.
gentlemen, yes, you go through andropause, pause, and it is changing hormones and in your brain wiring and in everything that's happening in your body. And you will fear this. Some people say, oh, it's a midlife crisis, and some people it happens between 40 and 60.
Hmm.
And it's the whole perspective change of your life.
Yeah.
And it's not that, there's something wrong with you. It's a biological function.
Hmm.
No, you do not lose the reproductive ability, but you lose other abilities and how you function as a human.
Right.
And it is so, so important, especially for men. So for men, it is also important to look at stress levels. Your stress levels do influence how you function. And men, unfortunately, and I would say it's a society mistake, not necessarily your mothers or fathers, because everybody does the best they can with the knowledge they have, right?
Sure.
So we didn't have the knowledge that I'm talking about 20 years ago.
Definitely not.
They couldn't have taught you that.
Yeah.
It was just so we cannot blame them, but we do have the knowledge now. And the goal is to use the knowledge to your advantage rationally. Stress kills our men. Stress kills relationships. Stress kills depressions and creates self-talk, which men are absolutely incredible at. They did a study also at Stanford, and they took men and their um, communication. It turned out that men have about 80% less vocabulary for emotional description.
Oh, I believe that.
Now, dear men, if you have boys and you don't want them to live in stress and in self-doubt, please start teaching them vocabulary for different emotions. So being angry, peeved, annoyed, irritated,
Yeah.
and then play a game. Okay, let's find examples in your life, and that's very important. When you are irritated. Okay, great. What? Give me an example when you're peeved, when you're annoyed. So your brain can start connecting words to events. And what happens is in your head, without any effort, you start building a ladder of emotions. So you don't go 0 to 100, then you have other options of feelings.
Hmm.
And it slows down the process of getting angry. Go, yeah, well, this is actually, I'm just annoyed, which
Hmm.
means different chemicals released. You feel differently. There is less cortisol. You get less stress, less tense. You breathe better. Your brain functions better. So if you want to help yourself, gentlemen and boys and your sons, there is an emotional wheel you can play with. You can download it from the internet. It's absolutely free. It
Hmm.
has a lot of vocabulary for different emotions and start playing around. Okay, when was I happy? When was I ecstatic? When I was furious? When I was angry? So your brain can start connecting those and go, okay, well, this is this feeling, this is this feeling. And I promise the intensity of your feelings will lower. It's
Hmm.
as simple as that.
Hmm. Okay, so um, let's go back over the list. Let's recap a little bit. So diet, we're moving.
Yes. Yes.
We're changing our perspective.
Yes.
I want to talk about self-talk too. Does that? Let me get through the list. Be around people, right?
Yes.
Oxytocin, embracing is good. Make it weird, guys. Just hug dudes. It's all good. And
Yep.
then get out into nature. Um, self-talk. Where is self-talk in there? Is that a perspective thing, or because I know it's a struggle? You mentioned it a couple of times. It's a struggle, I think, for many people, but especially people going through something traumatic like divorce, where they're left, they're gonna pile on with that negative self-talk. Where does that fit in this equation, and then how do you combat it?
Okay. So self-talk is your enemy, and we can all agree on that.
Hmm.
Self-talk, the positive, no, but the
Right,
negative,
negative,
we
yeah.
call this automatic negative thoughts, and we call
Mm.
them ants. And there's a self-beating ant, there's a fortune teller ant,
Mm.
there is always a never ant.
Mm.
And the best way to combat that is those questions that I gave you.
Mm.
Is it true? Is
Yeah.
it really true who I would be without that thought? Why? Because anytime you combat a when you something resist it persists, right? You keep pushing and you just go back and forth.
Right.
But when you open to curiosity, it has a way of moving.
Mm.
So one of the questions I use for myself, isn't that interesting that I thought that?
Mm.
And I allow my brain to explore. And I go, yeah, that's kind of stupid.
Right.
I have no clue why I thought that, but okay. More power to you. So the less energy you give to it, and I know it's easy to say, but trust
Sure.
me, I practice this.
Yeah.
Another thing, when that negative self-talk starts, get up and change the place. You know, when you were like sitting there doing something, go, oh, I gotta go to the kitchen and get that. And you go to the kitchen, and you're like, uh, why the
Right.
hell did I come here?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's your brain's ability to kind of disassociate and forget what it was doing.
Mm.
And it happened because you changed the place. Your thought and your feelings and everything that was happening was assigned to the place where you were sitting. That was
Mm.
happening there. The moment you change the perspective with your body
Mm.
and moved somewhere else, it lost the train of thought. So you can use the same mechanism to break the pattern of thinking of negative self-talk. Just get up and go outside.
Mm.
And your brain will break for a second, and you have a chance to redirect yourself.
Mm. I like that. Um, if everyone, if they do all these things to varying degrees or whatever, I don't know, you can be perfect on all these, but let's say you're really your diet, you're getting around people, you're working on your self-talk. Someone who's depressed, and I know this might not be fair, but I'm asking anyway. How long do they have to sort of follow these things in order to come up out of the depression?
That will depend on the person because every person is different. I usually, when you are prone to depressive states, I usually suggest working for about half a year to a year with a coach.
Gotcha.
I'm a coach, so I prefer coaches, obviously, but therapists are great for other things
Sure.
and psychologists. Why? Because we sometimes need outside eyes
Mm-hmm.
to ask us questions,
Yeah.
and you go, yeah, if you put it that way, that makes absolutely no sense, right? So this is kind of the role of I mean, unless you have a best friend who's a coach or a trainer or,
Right.
a
Right.
therapist, I highly suggest getting into an environment like this that will kind of allow you to get out of your way.
Mm.
Now, sometimes it takes 3, 4 weeks. Sometimes it takes 2, 3 days because you train yourself. Remember, everything is, so for example, if you're feeling bad, can you make yourself feel worse?
Oh, God, 1,000%. Absolutely.
Guess what?
Yeah.
That means it's in your control.
Very true.
You can make yourself feel worse. You can make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
Now, depending, you are so skilled on making yourself feel like crap.
Yeah.
My favorite question to all my clients, if you would speak to other people the way you speak to yourself, would you have any friends?
Yeah. No, I say it all the time. Yeah. Talk to
Yep.
yourself like you would your friend. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we practice the putting down part. Now we need to practice the lifting up part.
Yeah.
And, if you're 80 and you're just starting, that probably will take you a while. But Everything, every pattern in your brain can be broken. Now, needless to say, if you had a traumatic brain injury, or for example, and that could be also another reason for depression, just by the way, if you have a lot of depressive states, get your brain scanned with a SPECT scan
Mm,
and see if there has not been a trauma in a certain area of the brain,
mm,
because then exercises are great, but you will need additional support like hyperbaric oxygenating chamber, like
mm,
specific maybe supplement or medication that will help with the blood flow in that specific area. And not everything can be done naturally. And again, if everything could be done naturally, we would have been living up to 90 and 100 without no medication, right?
sure.
Obviously, we can't.
No.
So everything has its place. Try. But if you're feeling that this is not getting better, um, that's the time to go to a doctor and get a prescription and then hire a therapist or a coach. So when you're stabilized, you have new skills that will not allow you to go back to that place.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. I do think a coach, a therapist, a good one is an
Yes.
invaluable tool in this process. I want to shift to one more topic that I don't know how long this one might take, but you mentioned dopamine, and I think that's something that influences, or I guess influences our social media behavior, right?
Yes.
What do we do if we feel like that's an issue for us? Like if we're sort of addicted to our phones, addicted to that dopamine hit.
Well,
How do
first of
you?
all, we don't say sort of addicted. You are
Okay,
addicted or you're not.
okay,
Okay.
so let's say we're addicted. How do we?
You're addicted.
What do we do? Do we do? Yeah, what do we do?
What do we do? That's a very common addiction. I have a lot of clients with social media addictions, and surprisingly, a lot of them are adults, not teenagers.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it.
Just saying. So, first of all, dopamine, when you scroll, it gives you a hit every time. Easy. It gives you a snapshot of somebody's life, and we tend to connect, go, oh, they're so amazing. Well, you're
Right,
freaking seeing 5 seconds of their life. Like, really?
right, true.
5 minutes ago, they might have just been in a car accident. They just posted this,
Right,
whatever.
right.
But first thing we do, dopamine is also connected to color. So what I want you to do, I want you to turn your phone into black and white.
Interesting. I like
That will be
that.
less enticing.
Huh. Okay. I like it.
I know.
That's
Neuroscience can be very practical. And
absolutely
that's why I'm a neuroscience-based coach, because
mm,
we take all those studies and we make them practical. I could explain to you which triggers and which dopamine, but it's really useless. Turn the
right.
phone into black and white.
I like it.
That's first. Second of all, we're going to go back to celebrating, which we haven't spoken about, because notice that when men watch sports, they are celebrating like crazy. They're jumping, screaming, clapping.
Guilty.
Guys, you haven't moved your finger to achieve that, and you're celebrating that.
That's true. Very
You
true.
haven't done anything. And
Nope.
you're so excited like it's you by proxy.
Sure. 100%. Yep. Guilty.
What would what would need to happen for you to celebrate yourself for that hard work?
That's a great question. I don't think anyone's asked me a better question than that in the history of this podcast. I don't, if I'm being honest, damn near nothing, sadly.
Well, then that needs work,
Sure.
because happiness is triggered by celebration, by your feeling of achievement. And when you're a kid and you were doing things, you were fully engaged and you were happy, you got an A and you were jumping and doing on basic things. See, when we grow up, we think we need to be the superhero and, yes, I saved life and 55,000 lives. Now I'm great.
Right, right.
But that's not going to happen for
No,
most of us.
true.
Rarely we're going to save 55,000 lives and get to be a superhero. What would happen if you could celebrate the fact that you opened the door for somebody? What would happen if you could celebrate the fact that you did what you promised yourself you're going to do and feel phenomenal about it and get this feeling of achievement?
Hmm.
See, what we have found is that people forget to become self enticing and endorsing humans. We focus on somebody else. A lot of men and women do that, and we live their life instead of our own. So nothing that happens in your life has value. But the same thing done by a person on TV, and you're so excited for them.
Hmm.
So ask yourself again, what needs to happen for you to feel that you can celebrate?
I mean, there's a larger issue there, I think, with around like it involves sort of like taking compliments, like, feeling good about, I guess, who you are. If I'm being, I guess it's
No,
sort of the core of it, right?
I
Where
know.
like, yeah, I mean, I hear nice things all the time about this podcast. And I try not to brush it off, but and I really do try, but it's not a comfortable thing. Um,
Well,
and so I
who
think
gave you the
that's
right? Stop. Who gave you the right to take away the pleasure of somebody making you feel good and saying something that they truly believe is true? Who gave you the right not to acknowledge that and take
uh
away their joy
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, me, I
from
guess.
giving?
Yeah. Yeah, me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable that I don't
Well, make it comfortable. If you
yeah,
made it uncomfortable, you can, we already established, if you can make
true.
yourself feel worse, you can make yourself feel better.
Very true. Why is
So
it that this is maybe isn't a fair question, and I think I kind of know the answer, but why is it that the negative is so fucking comfortable for us humans and the positive is not? Why is that?
our society, simple. We live it in this false narrative of you have to be humble.
Mm,
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna use the bad word because I don't curse, but
mm,
it's total BS.
mm,
And feeling good. So I'm Polish
mm.
and I am quite bubbly and I'm quite happy.
Right.
But living in Poland, that was not allowed. And when I do videos now, educational videos, and I have all this energy and I'm all this jolly kind of happy human, my mother still calls me from Poland and says, Dominika, don't be so happy. Nobody will trust you
Ah,
because
wow.
joy is associated with stupidity in Poland.
That's crazy. Interesting. Makes sense. I mean, in some ways. Huh.
Because
Um,
if life is hard, you have to be unhappy, right?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
we
well,
have all those sayings. Life is hard. Money doesn't go on trees.
right, right,
Work
right.
hard, play hard. All this blah, blah, blah. And we listen to songs. Songs are number four programmer in your life.
Hmm.
You keep hearing the same thing on repeat. And guess what? It drills into your brain, and then your brain looks for proof, finds proof, you make it your belief.
I think I could talk about this for hours and hours. Thank you so much for doing this. Is there any other thing that we missed in the list of things to do to help with depression? Did we miss anything? I think we covered it all.
I think we covered a lot, and I'm sure nobody's going to take notes. I mean,
They
unless they will
better.
sit down and
That's a
they better.
direct order, fellas.
But when you choose one thing to change, I'm going to say this, it's very important. Do not change everything at once. You'll get overwhelmed and you will not change anything. Choose
Yeah,
one
yeah,
thing that resonates with you the most,
yeah.
work on that, and then go to the next thing.
I'm
If,
glad you said that. Yeah, because that's a challenge for me sometimes. And then you get overwhelmed. You're like, fuck it, I'm not going to do any of it.
yep, yep, and then you're not going to get the result.
Yeah, very
Baby
true.
steps are actually much more effective than massive action. And I know I love Tony, but massive action is not for everybody, not for a long period of term. Your body is not designed to live in a high stress level with concentration on a billion things you're changing.
Yeah,
Change is a process.
yeah,
Choose one thing out of what we talked about, maybe two, the easiest one for you. That's very important. The easiest one for you, because then you get to celebrate every day that you did something for yourself.
yeah.
See, when
Amen.
we're little kids, when we fall on our face, when we take the first step, our parents don't call us names and yell at us that we're idiots. They go, "You stupid idiot, you took only
Right,
one step. How could you?" No, they go, "Oh my God, that's so great. Wow." Your brain
right,
goes, that felt good. Let me try again. We
right.
want that for ourselves. We want that try again. So, and if you feel that you're not at a stage to try those things, please go seek help
Yeah,
with a doctor or a psychiatrist or a therapist or a coach, or, go get medication if necessary. Make sure you do your blood work. That's so important because they will influence how you feel.
Yeah.
And the truth is, if you're in an ill environment that is reinforcing feeling bad, change that freaking environment.
Yeah.
You
Dominika,
cannot get out of depression if you don't.
agreed. Action, right? You got to do something. So how can people find you? What's the best way for them to reach you if they want to work with you or learn about you? What's the best way?
Okay, well, you can go to very simple, yourbraincoachd.com, and you have services for corporate and you have services for individuals. You can go to YouTube, yourbraincoachd.com. You can go to Instagram, yourbraincoachd.com, and you can go to Facebook, yourbraincoachd.com. You have the same materials. The only different type of material that's being put out is on LinkedIn,
Okay.
and that is more professional, more business oriented. Everything else is for personal use. And you can
Gotcha.
also, check out the Amazon book on Amazon, which is called The Magic of Dreaming Big, Acting Small, and Achieving Success for people who get overwhelmed. And on purpose, it's only 80 pages, so you don't get overwhelmed.
I like it. I'm going to definitely check that out. Thank you so much for doing this. The last question that I ask everyone, as you know, is what words of wisdom would you impart to a man just beginning his divorce journey?
You're like a book. Everything in your book has a meaning. Some people are a word, some people are a phrase, some people are a sentence, some people are a paragraph. Some create a chapter, and some become heroes alongside of you in the story of your life. They're all necessary and needed for the variety and experiences. Nothing was really against you, it was all for you, so you can have even better and bigger and grander and more exciting life than you had before.
That excellent words of wisdom, Dominika. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Since my separation in July of 2019, I have done an incredible amount of work on myself. I've had many different therapists, life coaches, and went through different programs. I've taken all that I've learned and put it into my own program called Forged by Fire. If you are interested in having me help you navigate your divorce, please hit my website, risingphoenixdivorcecoach.com. I look forward to working with you.